So this is a piece for Substack that's going to try to review what was taken down off of TikTok yesterday. And I did a piece specifically about the Genius Act and how everything we've been talking about for 4 years with Bruno is, excuse me, there's a big truck coming up the driveway, is in the monetary system is now revolves around what we've been calling crypto, which is now going to use blockchain-based stable coins to support the U.S. dollar treasury complex. And I talked a little bit about, and I think this is important. Think about $2 trillion in student loans, $100 trillion in total credit market debt in the United States, $37 trillion in treasuries, $7 trillion has to be rolled over just this year. And then over here is the national money printer. What is that? Well, somebody gets to print money. And right now what they've been doing is neither the Fed nor the Treasury are printing, a little bit, they have like these facilities and so forth. But for the most part, what they've been doing is reaching into the checking account while they're issuing treasuries, they're also buying treasuries and trying to hold the treasury complex steady and, for example, keep the 30-year bond right at 5%, not let it go higher. I want you to think about this in terms of, sorry, the window's open and it's blowing the door. I want you to think of this in terms of what happened in the other civil war, because we're in a civil war right now. And you can see that this $170 billion for regular troops called ICE, and ICE is sort of like ISIS, but they're for local domestic purposes. They're being recruited primarily from prison guards. Abraham Lincoln came to Washington, D.C. The South was the biggest exporting entity in North America. And of course, it was exporting primarily cotton. The slaves were the biggest asset in North America other than the land. So here comes country lawyer, grows a beard because some young woman tells him he'd look better with a beard, and he also needed to do it to hide from potential assassins. And one of the first things he does is take control of the money supply and starts to print money. So the way he fought back against this big slavery, think of slavery as a kind of debt, like a biblical kind of a slavery, like a debt that can never be repaid, right? And the way he offset it was not just blue versus gray chasing each other up and down the Shenandoah Valley, as I like to say, but he takes control of the money and overwhelms this thing, destroys it, sets Atlanta on fire, cuts a path from Atlanta to Savannah 20 miles wide, destroys every horse, every pig, every barn, everything was destroyed, right? So what they're doing now is trying to use new technology to support a financial system that would fall in the way that this church was bombed by Israel of its own. This is a Catholic church in Gaza that was just bombed in the last week. It's a war crime. And I wanted to emphasize that. I rarely use notes, but I want to do it this time. I also want to talk about Alexander Dugin real quick. I follow him now on Substack. I also follow Seymour Hersh. If you don't know, Dugin is Putin's Steve Bannon, so to speak. Dugin is suggesting that Americans should try to have progressive policies, at the same time maintain some sort of traditionalism. He suggested maybe this will be Tucker Carlson will become a presidential candidate, and this kind of let's like have Joe Rogan kind of progressivism. Joe Rogan's historically a Democrat and talks about it openly, but at the same time we have to maintain these traditional values. So today, this is the 1,000 Years Together, I want to talk about Judaism and Catholicism. I'm going to have to do another piece to get into that. But right now, I want to remind you that through the 20th century, at the height, Make America Great Again, when was America most powerful? Probably around the Kennedy presidency. The end of the Kennedy presidency led to the Vietnam War, which destroyed our industrial capacity and took us off the dollar. the dollar pegged to gold. See how this all fits together? Like war and finance all go together. So I also wanted to remind you that the $700 billion, that's about how bad the mortgage problem was in 2008. $700 billion is not really that big of a number compared to right now. We have $7 trillion in treasuries to roll over. So we've gone from a $700 billion problem in 2008. Bitcoin came out just after that, to a $7 trillion problem. So a trillion is 1,000 billion. So we have a problem that's now 1,000 times worse than when Jim Cramer told Becky Quick in her giraffe dress, they know nothing. They have no idea what they're doing. These firms are calling me and they're going to go out of business, right? It's a $700 billion problem. Now they have a $7 trillion problem. So I also wanted to remind you that Ripple goes back to 1992. And somebody brought it to my attention 4 years ago that Ripple, 4% of XRP, which was created by Ripple 4 or 5 years ago, was owned by the Rothschild Investment Corporation. So where are we now is Trump has triggered his own cult called MAGA through the non-release of the Epstein files. And then people are waking up to things like, oh, and Kash Patel, the guy who said he was going to release all this information about Epstein, and mainstream people like Tucker Carlson are now connecting Epstein to Maxwell, to intelligence agencies, etc., here and abroad. You know what I'm talking about. And Kash Patel sleeps with an is very attractive Israeli woman who's 20-some years younger than him. So everywhere you look, you can't get away from this. You can look at the Catholic Church in Gaza. You can't get away from these issues. So instead of sort of skirting these issues, I wanted to go right into it. I want to go right at 1,000 years together. We don't have to talk about Islam so much because look at what Iran did, right? Iran is the Islamic Republic. It's not Marxist, it's not capitalist, it's not Western, it's not this, it's not that. It does exist. I was going to do the thing from Wolf of Wall Street, but it is Islamic. And contrary to all the gaslighting propaganda of the war on terror, the Islamic world is not aggressively attacking the West. Muslims didn't blow up the Catholic Church. So this video will be cycled through TikTok and then go up for free, of course, on Substack. And you're probably already seeing it there right now. But the next one, I want to get deeper into this, a really deep idea of how Catholics and Jews need to work together in America the way they did during the 20th century in the Democratic Party. So the Democratic Party has been taken over by Zionists. Full stop. No question about it. So what just happened, let's wind down with this, is Peter Thiel, J.D. Vance just met I think it was last weekend, with Rupert Murdoch, who owns the Wall Street Journal, and of course Fox News. And it looks like Trump is going to be moved out, whether it's congestive heart failure or he had relations with some teenage girl or some other unspeakable act that's going to come out. He may be doing the big two-finger salute and get on Marine One, or he's going to go to the hospital and we're not going to hear him anymore. And J.D. Vance will be brought in because J.D. Vance belongs to Peter Thiel. And in the next video, I want to really get into the fact Peter Thiel, who's German, if I remember, and one of the PayPal Mafia, and the founder of Palantir, which is now run by Alex Karp, was used in the Gaza war. It's called Lavender. So the thing that's going to be pushed into American technology and AI has a direct relation to war crimes. And they just met with Rupert Murdoch, who's been the head of propaganda for the war on terror since 9/11. See you on the other side.